Welcome to The Explainer. All right, today we're jumping into one of the most dramatic rescue stories in the entire Bible. We're talking about a story of one person's desperate cry and the absolutely cosmic, world-shaking answer that came back. So, have you ever been in one of those situations, where you feel completely surrounded, totally backed into a corner? Well, this explainer is all about Psalm 18, which is this incredible story about what happens when that kind of mortal danger meets divine intervention. It really makes you wonder, what does it actually look like when the creator of the universe decides to personally step into your fight? Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with a cry from utter despair. Then we'll look at this idea of God, my rock and fortress. From there, we dive into the main event, the earth-shaking divine intervention. Then we ask why it happened, in rescued because he delighted. After that, we'll see the transformation in empowered for impossible feats, and we'll wrap it all up with the triumphant conclusion, he lives. All right, first up, a cry from utter despair. And we are starting at absolute rock bottom here. This is David's moment of mortal danger, and he's describing a feeling of being, literally trapped and tangled up by the forces of death itself. I mean, the way the psalm paints this picture is just so vivid. We're not talking about just having a bad day here. This is a feeling of being hunted, of being trapped, just completely overwhelmed by enemies who are hostile to everything he believes in. So listen to this. The sorrows of death compassed me, and the floods of ungodly men made me afraid. The sorrows of hell compassed me about. The snares of death prevented me. What's so incredible about this is the raw honesty. You have to remember, in this culture, strength was everything. But David, he's not hiding his fear. He's not pretending to be tough. He's just laying it all out there. He's painfully honest about his own limits, even admitting his enemies were too strong for me. And that right there is the key to this whole story. It doesn't start with some big hero moment. It starts with a confession of total weakness. He is at the end of his rope, and he knows it. Okay, so section 2, God, my rock and fortress. Now, here's the thing. David's cry for help wasn't just a random shot in the dark, He wasn't just yelling into an empty room. His appeal was aimed at a God he had a history with, and this is where it gets really interesting. He starts by reminding himself and God of who he is. So look what he does. He calls God his rock, his fortress, his deliverer, his buckler, his high tower. It's like before the rescue even comes, he's building his own faith back up. He's using these powerful, solid metaphors, a rock, a fortress, to get his feet back on the ground, spiritually speaking, right in the middle of this chaos. And in the psalm, he says, "The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer," and it goes on. This isn't just wishful thinking. This is the foundation for everything that's about to happen. It's him dropping a spiritual anchor based on what he already knows to be true before the storm is even over. All right, section 3, the earth-shaking divine intervention. Because David cried out to a God he knew, his rock, his fortress, the answer he got, well, it wasn't quiet, and it definitely wasn't subtle. What came next was a full-on, cosmic, terrifying, earth-shaking response. I mean, just try to wrap your head around the scale of this. The psalmist describes a scene where the very foundations of the world react to God's presence. So because one person prayed, the earth itself starts to shake and tremble. The entire natural world is thrown into chaos. The verse says, "Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations also of the hills moved and were shaken because he was wroth." That word wroth is key. It means this powerful, righteous anger. The psalmist is making it super clear. This isn't some delegated job for an angel. This is God himself personally stepping into the fight because of the injustice David was facing. And the imagery just gets more and more intense. We're talking about a display of awesome power, where God is described as literally parting the sky to come down. You've got smoke, fire, deep darkness. This isn't just a bad storm. This is the creator of the universe arriving on the battlefield. It says, "He bowed the heavens also and came down, and darkness was under his feet." This just hammers home the point, right? This is not a distant, hands-off God. This is a God who gets personally involved, who will bend the rules of the cosmos to rescue one single person. Which brings us to section 4, rescued because he delighted. So you have to ask, why? Why such a huge, dramatic, over-the-top rescue? The answer the psalm gives is, well, it's actually really surprising and deeply personal. So in the middle of all this earth-shaking power, the text says God personally reached down and drew David out of the chaos, which it describes as many waters. Think about that for a second. With all that cosmic firepower, the rescue itself is so intimate. It's not a big explosion. It's a specific, personal hand reaching down to pull him out. It's his moment of incredible tenderness right in the middle of a hurricane. And this next verse gets to the absolute core of the whole story. It says, "He delivered me from my strong enemy. He delivered me because he delighted in me." Get that? The reason for this incredible rescue wasn't because David was perfect or because he earned it. The reason was simply because God delighted in him. It was all about relationship. Okay, on to our next section, empowered for impossible feats. Because here's the thing. God's rescue didn't just, reset the board and put David back where he started. It completely changed him. It transformed him from a victim into a victor. And the before and after picture here is just wow. Before the rescue, he's saying, "My enemies were too strong for me." After, "By my God have I leaped over a wall." Before, he was trapped by the sorrows of death. After, "By thee I have run through a troop." It's a total 180. So where does this newfound greatness come from? You'd think the answer would be, God's raw power. But the source is actually something totally unexpected. The psalmist says it's God's gentleness. "Thy gentleness hath made me great." It's that combination of tender care and immense power that really does the transforming. Which brings us to our final section, the triumphant conclusion. He lives. So, after all that, what's the big takeaway from this incredible story? How does what happened to David have anything to do with the impossible situations we might find ourselves in? Well, the psalm doesn't just give us a cool story. It actually gives us a practical pattern to follow for our own battles. First, cry out to God in your distress. Second, declare his character. Call him your rock and fortress. Third, trust that he will rescue you personally. And fourth, act in a strength he gives you. It turns David's story into a roadmap for us. And this is the grand finale. "The Lord lives, and blessed be my rock, and let the God of my salvation be exalted." It's this powerful, triumphant declaration that the God who rescues is alive and is worthy of all praise. It's an amazing shout of victory that literally started as a desperate whisper from rock bottom. So that leaves us with this final thought. If God answered David with an earth-shaking, cosmos-bending rescue, what is he waiting to do in your life? Just something to think about. Now, to really make sure all this sinks in, be sure to use the flashcards to go over the key ideas and then take the quiz. Thanks to the Unique Faith in Jesus team, Faith in Jesus, for their work on this.